Welcome to another Out of the Depths presentation, Drift Outfitters series focusing on different fisheries across Canada. Tonight we're really lucky to be joined by Brian Still of Still Water Fishing and Tours up in the Manitoulin area of Georgian Bay. Brian, how are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you, Chris. And
Awesome.
like I said, it's nice to be part of this as well.
Cool. So we're going to talk a little tonight about your area, about kind of that far north Georgian Bay area. We're not talking Honey Harbor and in that area. We're talking far north, and a little bit of a different fishery up your way. So this will be interesting, I think, for people to see. And despite it being that far north, it's not that far of a drive for people. So I know you have taken a bunch of customers of ours out. The shop owner Rob was out with you last year. I know he's planning on going back up again with you. So this is kind of far off, but not far off. So it'll be a cool experience for everyone, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll get started here. Without further ado, I'm Brian Still. It's nice to meet everyone here. I look forward to this opportunity and everybody who watches this video now and also in the future on Drift Outfitters YouTube channel. It's great to be doing this right now. It's great to be talking fishing. It's been a long winter. I haven't got to fish much this winter, so I'm really excited to get back out on the water. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my guiding business, but also the unique fishing opportunities that Georgian Bay area around Manitoulin Island has to offer. So yeah, I'll get started here. So again, I'm Brian Still. I'm from Whitefish River First Nation, which is a small First Nation community about 15 minutes from Manitoulin Island. If you don't know Manitoulin Island is the world's largest freshwater island. It's surrounded by Georgian Bay, also the North Channel. It's absolutely beautiful, super scenic and remote area. The water is it's something special. I know a lot of vacationers up here, once they come up here for the first time, they kind of can make this their place. And then eventually seem to almost like retire in this area because it just captures you. It's a great place to create memories with your families. I feel like I meet a lot of people across this province, but across this country. And the people who do know of Manitoulin Island, it's always from that like growing up at camp experience. They traveled up here with their families. That whole fishing on the lake, saunas, just generally being by the water, but just being, just at peace with, at peace with being in nature. And that's what the island has to offer. So a little bit of background about my guiding. I've been guiding now for 10 years. I started my business when I was about 20 years old. Just couldn't do the school thing. Just could never sit in a classroom. I kept on trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was kind of working in construction at the time. I had an injury from snowboarding when I was about like 19 or 20 that kind of left me out of work for about a year. So I kind of didn't know where I wanted to go. I was still, from my past, from growing up on the island in this area, the Whitefish River First Nation, I spent my entire childhood kind of just on the water with family fishing. Like fishing was my life. It's always been my life. Even since I was a kid, you'd just find me down on the dock with my life jacket on, just spending my entire summer fishing. So my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time then, just one day randomly kind of was like, why don't you start fishing? Why don't you try to take people fishing? I kind of grew up in this like tourism world with my dad kind of owning a marina here in Birch Island, which accesses the water around Manitoulin and Killarney. So it kind of just all clicked. And I was like, yeah, at the time I was spending a lot of time fishing after my injury. I was getting back into it. I was loving it. I was spending every day doing it. And then so I just decided to make a Facebook page. Is kind of how it all started. And within a couple weeks after getting some straight figured out insurance, I was on the water guiding. And I remember that first day of just like getting returning to the dock after spending a day with an awesome group of people, and then like having a pocket full of cash. Wasn't that much money at the time, just because I was just starting out, but it was still that experience of like making a living off of doing what I love to do. So then I kept going. I just kept pushing, and I found a niche of marketing. With a GoPro, I just started kind of filming my fishing adventures, filming my charters, promoting a lot on Facebook, social media, and my business just kept growing and growing. Surprisingly, that first year, I was actually spending, half the month on the water guiding, my very first year guiding. Obviously, over the years, that just grew and grew and grew. The social media stuff just kept going bigger and bigger. And it really kind of just took off. And I was lucky enough to be able to make a career out of fishing throughout the years. That has also developed into other stuff through the social media. I work with a lot of brands now in the fishing industry and other industries, doing a lot of marketing, which all kind of just stemmed from that fishing rod and that GoPro, and not that traditional school route. But yeah, so my business has been in operation for 10 years now. I'm really looking forward to this summer. I'm excited to get back out on the water. Throughout that learning process of at the beginning of my business, I was lucky enough to spend my winters out in BC, where I kind of fell in love with fly fishing. I was really excited to bring fly fishing back to this area. I know a lot of people do fly fishing. There's always fly fished in this area, but for me, it was just something so new to come back and to take what I learned out in BC, targeting those bull trout, and bring it back to try to bring it to pike and muskie and bass. So that was a really unique experience. But overall, it's just like I said, my business is growing, and I'm appreciative of all my clients, and I appreciate all the time I get to spend on the water. My business primarily targets muskies and pike. I do a lot of bass, salmon fishing, pretty much everything that swims throughout the year. That's kind of what I'm walking through with this presentation here. I'm going to walk you through of kind of like how my guide season plays out, the unique fishing opportunities in the area. I'll kind of let you know some tricks and tips of doing it on your own, but also just showing you all the amazing fishing opportunities Manitoulin has to offer. So like I explained a little bit before, I'm from Pike River First Nation, 15 minutes from Manitoulin Island, which is in the Zone 14 in the Ontario's fishing regulations. If you look at that, it is just encompasses a giant body of water. Manitoulin, like I said, is right here. Killarney is 2.5-hour drive away from my house, but it's actually just a 20-minute boat ride. So I'm kind of in this perfect home base of like so much water and so much opportunity. As you can kind of see in these photos in the bottom of the screen, you can kind of see what it looks like from above. You see my location there, Stillwater Fishing, just off the island, and you see all the endless water. Over on the right, it's a little bit more detailed picture of all the islands, and like we're right close to my house, and it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of islands in this beautiful scenic location that's surrounded by the La Cloche mountain range. And it's just super, yeah, it's just super beautiful and super scenic. Back in the day, like I said, Birch Island, Whitefish River First Nation, it kind of actually was an old school American fishing destination. It was very popular with American families, American cottage owners. So Bay of Islands and McGregor Bay actually had fishing lodges, had guides. It was a very busy area for like that general American fishing package. You know, you come, you stay, you get your meals, you spend your day fishing in a john boat. That kind of since died off over, you know, the 90s and early 2000s. I feel like kind of died off, and then that's kind of where I came into play. And now I'm still the kind of like, there's a few guides in the area. Manitoulin has a lot of guides. So yeah, so I mean, the island, gorgeous, beautiful place, surrounded by water, tons of local accommodations. You can stay all over the island if for do-it-yourself fishing trips. There's all kinds of remote island getaways as well, where you can actually rent your own private island. Anytime you want to look, you know, anytime you're looking to come to the island area, feel free to reach out to me. I can make those connections and suggestions for places to stay. Something special about the island is it offers all kinds of fishing opportunities. You know, we have tributaries, creeks, streams. We have big water, small water, bays, rocks, sand flats, shoals. Like it's just everything you can imagine is out there. So this location is very special because like even me, myself, I spent my entire life fishing here within a 2-hour boating radius, and I still have not even touched a very small part of that. The opportunities are just endless. So again, I kind of explained a little bit about all that stuff there, probably rambled on a little bit too long. I just, there's some more photos to focus on in the bottom, which just shows you the very picturesque locations that you can fish in when visiting this area. Keep going here. Talk a little bit about the water. The water here is super unique. It is super clear, crystal clear. There's times of the year where you can see 30 feet down. You can see the bottom, especially when you're actually on the shores of Manitoulin Island, looking into Georgian Bay. It's just something special, especially on the limestone shelves. It's just the water is so clear, and it offers this unique ness to fly fishing that I've experienced. Is like I'm a fan of going away and going to the ocean and doing sight fishing, whereas like it's very similar here. It's so clear that like there's so many sight fishing opportunities that it just makes it a fun time. It's very scenic, as you can see by the photo of there, my buddy Chris casting there. It's just like no matter where you look, it is so picturesque. But the best thing about it is when you're fishing, you're always alone. I mean, yeah, you'll run into people in the water, but there's so much water here, you can always kind of stay away from people, and that's kind of what I like. I'm one of those fishermen who just likes to be in nature. So there's a lot of opportunities just to be away from people here and not have to be fish shoulder to shoulder. And the remoteness of it, the remoteness of the water is something very unique as well. There's still a lot of areas that don't have cell service. You know, you could go down these channels and inlets and bays for hours and be in the middle of nowhere, no people around, no development, no cottages, and just literally be away. So that's something that's you also got to look out for when you're also visiting here too. Just make sure, if you are heading out on the water, if you do have a boat, just always kind of alert people about where you're going, friends and family, so everyone has knows where you are, just because there is limited cell service in the areas I fish. And we'll keep moving on here. A little bit more about the water and its uniqueness. I kind of explained all the different types of, the big water, the flats, tributaries, endless bays, channels, giant weed beds. I mean, that's something special here too, is like the weed lines. When you're out here, you can actually find some weed beds that go on for like a kilometer, it seems like. I mean, not actually, but it's just endless. You'll spend a whole 45 minutes fishing a shoreline and you'll still be on that same weed bed, which is very, very cool. Again, the crystal clear, the clarity of the water, perfect for sight fishing. I know there's a photo down here on the right of a pike swimming away, and that is the first couple months of pike fishing. That's what it's like. You're literally looking into crystal clear water, and you can see every detail of those fish above the water, which just makes it so exciting for fly fishing. It's big water, so this water can be intimidating. There's lots of areas around the island, areas like McGregor Bay, Bayfin, Fraser Bay, the North Channel. Those areas have lots of islands in them, so you can stay away. You can stay close to shorelines. You can stay out of the wind on the windier days, but it is bigger water on the island, but don't let that scare you. That bigger water also gives opportunities for big fish. Just as long as you always watch the weather, make sure there's, no intimate weather coming in, no, rough water, and you should be fine. Could be a very challenging area to fish. Patience and hard work pays off. This place is great place for anglers looking for that one fish. As the fisherman, I've always found, when I was younger, it was like all about just catching the biggest fish or the most fish or the smartest fish. And as I grew older, it just, it became more about just fishing. So that's why this place is so special, is because one of those places where you're getting so much more out of that experience. You're getting so much more out of that fishing experience, whether it's not just about the fish, even though it is here. This is one of those places where you're going to have to work hard for the fish. It's going to be a monster. If you're into those big size fish and you want to put in the effort, this is the place to do it. Like I said there, big water, big fish. Are you up for the challenge? One thing when it comes to fly fishing, like I said before, I like going down to the oceans or remote places and fly fishing, and I get my butt kicked. And there's many times where guides in remote countries, they're yelling at me because I missed a strip set on a giant tarpon or a permit. And it's almost comparable to that. I know it's not the same thing, but it is in a way up here. It is challenging. The weather's going to challenge you. The fish are going to challenge you. There's so much water that there's so many places for these fish to be, and there's so much structure for them to be on, and they're never on that same structure. They're always moving. So that's why this place can be such a challenge. It feels like a needle in a haystack sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking bad about the fishery. It's absolutely amazing and it's great fishing. It's just that place where you're going to have to work for it, but you will be rewarded. I mean, throughout this presentation, I'll show you lots of photos that are on here. Not all those are caught on the fly. A lot of them are caught on the fly, but I just kind of want to show the opportunities and the possibilities that here. You see that photo in the giant middle. You see the photo in the middle on this page. That is a massive muskie. We have a lot of massive muskies here. That's kind of what my life is about, is catching those big muskies. And this is the place to do it. So like I said, it's just big water can be challenging. If you put in the patience with me, it's like I tell my clients, especially if I have a bad day, especially when it comes to fly fishing, there's a lot of factors. Casting is a big one. You want to be able to cast far. You want to be able to cast consistent. You want to be able to really be good with accuracy. Sometimes we get lots of opportunities on the boat. Sometimes it always doesn't work out so well. Some days I do have challenging days on the water, and I always tell my clients, just keep coming. It's going to happen. I'm going to get you that once in a lifetime fish. I'm going to get you your personal best. The amount of times every summer that I hear, this is my personal best. It happens almost daily sometimes when the fishing's good, but it's just, I like to be honest with my clients, and I like that relationship that we build. I've had clients that have wanted, they wanted that 40-pound plus muskie. That's what they wanted. I had this guy fish for me 5 years before that opportunity actually happened. I've had people fish with me for 15 minutes and that opportunity happens, but it's just, it just goes to show you that this is a place that just it'll challenge you, and it just makes it so much more rewarding when it actually happens. So the next few slides, I'm going to kind of talk about my 3 favorite things to do in this area when it relates to fly fishing and fishing the waters around Manitoulin Island. So I'll go a little bit more detail further on in the presentation when I start breaking down these categories into how I fish my season. But yeah, so for the 3 that I love the sight fishing pike on the fly. It is such a cool experience. Ice out, those fish haven't seen much. They're coming off their spawn. They're in 4 feet lesser water, sometimes even a foot. You got large number of fish congregated into one area. The water is crystal clear after ice out, and it could just be such an unbelievable experience. I'm like 1 month away, and I cannot wait for it. So just picture this, we're cruising in the Kingfisher, we're ripping down, you got the Lacloche Mountain Range in the background. It's early morning, the ice just came off. I often spend the first week breaking through ice just to get to the locations. Funny enough story that kind of just came to my mind was there's about probably 3 or 4 years ago. This wasn't fly fishing, but we were sight fishing for pike. It was like opening day, a group of guys, we broke ice for an hour and a half in the morning, part of the charter, breaking ice all the way down to this bay. We get to this bay, we're parked in this frozen bay that just got a skim of ice on it. The sun's beating down on it, so we know it's going to disappear by the afternoon. The bay is loaded with monster pike, and we were bored, and a couple of the guys just started casting their lures on top of the ice, and those pike were chasing and trying to hammer the lures on top of the ice, and it was just it was wild to witness. And sure enough, an hour later, that ice finally melted off, and it was just hammer time. And we had 3 guys in the boat, and it was just fish, 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 fish. And it's like such a visual experience that time of year. Like I said, it's just like being in the flats. You're watching these giant 40-inch fish. You can, on a perfectly sunny, clear blue day, you can see these fish from, 40, 50, 60, 70 feet away. You can see them laying there, and you lay that perfect cast out to them, strip it in front of them, and boom. It's so that's why kind of sight fishing for pike on the fly is kind of my favorite time of the year. I'll go in a little bit more detail about it soon. Another great opportunity on the fly is casting the cabbage for muskies. This is, they say muskies is the fish of 10,000 casts, and this place will definitely prove that to you. We have some of the best muskie fishing in the world. I mean, this is where the giants are, but they are hard to catch. I mean, not to make it all sound like it's hard. I just like to be honest, and I just like to tell people this is a challenging fishery. And don't get me wrong, there's days where I've slammed 4 to 6 muskie on the fly in a day, but there's also days where I've had to work all day long for that one bite, and this is the place for it. It gives a unique opportunity for fly fishing, especially early season. You're fishing those weeds right after those muskies are off their spawn. When the season opens up, they're still clinging around those bays. They're still hanging on those points. You can still get away with some, relatively small tackle. You can still be using that 8 to 10 weight size, that 4 to 6 inch streamer, nice and easy on the arms. Whereas it graduates toward later in the season, you're going to use as big as flies as you possibly can, sometimes the size of your forearm, wrecking your shoulder all day casting for these things. But like I said, just another cool thing I thought I'd mention is chasing the muskies and the cabbage early season. And another exciting thing to do on the fly in the area is bass on the poppers. The bass fishing is incredible in this area, from one end of Manitoulin all the way to Killarney. It is just loaded with giant smallies and largies. Crystal clear water, like I said, sight fishing. You can fish them in the dark water, fish them in the lily pads. But the best time that I love fishing them is when they're on the rocks, crystal clear, smashing poppers. In the peak of summer, average bass, definitely well over 3.5 pounds, constant 4-pounders, good days, constant 5-pounders, great days, 6-pounders, and upwards. We had 3 fish over 7.5 pounds hit the boat this year. And they just seem to be just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, a lot has to do with the gobies. I'm sure you're aware of them down south. Lake Simcoe, this area, Georgian Bay, is loaded with them. I mean, our whole entire bottom of the lake is crawling with these invasive species. Who knows what the future holds to these, whether these things are going to be a good thing for the lakes or a bad thing. obviously most likely a bad thing. But what they've done is they've provided a great food source for the smallmouth bass, a lot of other species too. But what I've noticed is the whole changing habits of the smallmouth have really changed here. They're not always looking up. They're not always aggressive. They're all, like, for the most part, always looking down. So the popper fishing works really well at times, but there's those days where you got to fish them like the gobies. And like I said, those gobies have just, like I said, I mean, I remember when I was younger, it used to be rare to, you know, a 5 pound bass was rare. That was a hard thing to do. And now, like, it's it's hard not to catch a 5 pound bass. And you know, I never thought I'd hit 7.5 pounds, 8 pounds. Never thought that would be possible, but it is definitely possible out here, and it is definitely a good chance of it. But so those are my three little favorite things, like what I like to do around the area for fly fishing. Another one little important tip for coming up to the area is the moon. If you want to catch big fish, it's all about the moon. I know people, for me, it's my religion. It's what I live off of, and I wait for those days. I wait for those full moon cycles. I wait for the new moon. That is when I'm fishing. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's days where all the conditions, moon phase is horrible. You shouldn't be catching fish, and I'm still catching fish. But it has become such a thing that I've witnessed from spending all these days on the water, that the moon is everything. And the moon especially is everything to even the time periods of the day, whether it be overhead, whether it be underfoot, whether it be moon rise to the minute. It's just one of those peak activities, and just really makes the fishing great. I'm not going to go too much into detail about this, because this is honestly one of my biggest secrets when it comes to fishing. I know it's not that much of a secret, but to me, in the way I pattern the moon is kind of everything for catching the big predatory fish. So if you want to learn more, hit me up afterwards, or just book a charter and we can discuss the moon a little bit more. But I just wanted to touch base on it. If you are thinking about planning a trip up to this area, base it around a full moon or a new moon. And after all that rambling on here, now I'm going to kind of move on to my guide season. I figured this way would be a good way of presenting to everybody the opportunities over the months of the summer and the fall, the types of fish you can catch, where to catch them, not only just if you're going to fish with me, but if you're coming up to the Manitoulin area and you want to fish on your own. I just thought it would be a good way of presenting that. So we're going to go through the months here. So April, which is right now, usually I'm spending April, if you don't like I am now, still on the snowmobile, just kind of waiting for guide season, getting excited. I usually get a couple weeks towards the end of April where I get to fish on my own. So the main target species in April for me, and the funnest ones to do in the area, would also obviously be the rainbow trout and steelhead. Manitoulin Island is full of steelhead. It's crazy. There's rivers, creeks, tributaries, culverts. I mean, these things will be in the culverts in the spring, roadside culverts, right on the side of the road. There will be a steelhead run. So there's lots of opportunities. This is probably the best one if you don't have a boat and you want to come up to the island and spend some time fishing. This is going to be the fish and the time of the year that you're going to want to come. April all the way up until June. Early April, a lot of our tributaries and stuff are closed. There's definitely look into the fishing regulations before you come up, but there are some river mouths that remain open. Creeks, like I said, culverts, pretty much any shoreline around Manitoulin will have steelhead and rainbow trout in the spring. Fishing for these guys, I love fishing the river mouths, of fishing just off the shorelines. I'm pretty basic when it comes to fly fishing for them. Egg patterns, I mean, can't go wrong. I'll throw flies all day long, and I no matter what, the egg pattern works for me. I know some people hate on it, but I'm definitely never going to hate on it because it produces me a lot of fish. I use a lot of different nymphs. Another thing I love doing, just because I love that stripping. I love stripping streamers, swinging streamers through the fast water. It's productive, not always on most days. Like I said, when it is slower, or just if I'm looking to catch fish, it's all in that egg patterns. If you are coming up to fish Manitoulin Island, or fish Manitoulin, like I said, really check into the regulations. Really make sure you study those, because they can be a bit confusing. We do have a lot of closures on a lot of rivers. A lot of sections will be open, a lot of sections will be closed. Most don't open up to even towards the end of May. So just make you aware, but there is a lot of fishing opportunities in April. Another thing I want to mention when I'm talking about fishing Manitoulin Island and the area is, especially the island, it's mainly privately owned. So just make sure you're respecting property signs, making sure you're respecting people's private property. These are quiet areas. They're not used to seeing a lot of people. Some people can be protective of the properties, as they should be. So that's just one thing that you definitely want to watch when you are fishing up here, just because it is all private property. So access points can be hard. Again, feel free to reach out to me, connect with me. Let's open up some conversation. I can tell you how to get to certain areas. But yeah, so just respect that, but also respecting anglers and their kind of space. The best thing about this area up here, I mean, I'd say even past Perry Sound, all the way up to Thunder Bay, is the lack of pressure. You know, it's the ability to be even going fishing and being by yourself, being in nature. You know, it's nice to fish with people sometimes too. So don't get me wrong. If you meet somebody on the river, they want to fish together, have a time. But you know, if you're just, all I'm trying to say is just, you know, show a little bit of respect for anglers. These rivers are quieter. You move up to a hole, there might be someone fishing it. There's another one up the corner, or you know, just spread out. You know, so just make sure everyone's having a good time, but just be wary and just kind of respect the property and respect the people too. But like I said, I can, apart from this conversation, I can pull you in and we can have many different conversations about how to access these points, tricks and tips. If you want to dive into it a little further, I'm always happy to talk fishing. And that would be April and May. May is a super fun month for me, super fun month for the area, the island. Like I said, it's ice out happens usually in April, sometimes right in mid-May, but it's everything's coming alive in May, you know. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how I start my guide season, which starts May 1st. Back in the day, it used to be a lot of just gear fishing. Right now, I'm getting fully booked for the first few weeks on just fly fishing. I'm super excited for that. As you can see, Rob in the photo with a nice pike he got last year. He's joining me again this year. Also, some people that Drift recommended, so I always appreciate that. And yeah, so I'll just kind of briefly walk you in through how my May starts. And my May starts, like I said before, with the sight fishing pike, one of my favorite times of the year. And then I'll continue that pike fishing all through May on charters. And then towards the end of May, mid-May, it offers unique experiences for fishing for gar, pike, and carp, sight fishing them on the fly too. So I'll get in a little bit about that. The May fishing open seasons are pike, rainbow trout, walleye, carp, gar, and lake trout. Pike season opens up May 1st. Like I said, the first 2 weeks. Streamers, if you're coming up to the area and you want to do some fly fishing, streamers, 4 to 6 inch. The key to fishing pike in the spring. I shouldn't even be saying this on the internet, but I'm sure a lot of people know. But the key is matching the hatch imitations to smelt. Smelt are everywhere here. We have the big smelt run that happens in April. If you're not familiar with smelt, it's a small bait fish, runs up in the creeks to spawn. A lot of people actually love netting them, eating them. They're actually a great little table fare. So matching those, because after they're pushed out of those creeks, they'll be where the pike are. Wherever there's smelt, the pike are going to be in large numbers. Even in the shallow sight fishing areas, there will still be smelt around off the drop off. So that's what they'll be gorging on. So matching that hatch is key in the spring. I am so crazy in the spring. I will use like one fly only. The closest match I can get to a smelt, usually just a white strip of rabbit, the same size as a fly, is what I'll be stripping all spring. But yeah, like I said, it's that, can't get over how unique the experience is of fly fishing the pike in the shallows. That's sight fishing. I mean, it doesn't always work out as far as weather can really make it hard for me. Wind can make it hard for me. The pike will still bite. I just love that experience of being able to see that fish chase the fly to the boat and eat right beside the boat. Covered a little bit about flies there. Usually kind of after the pike spawn, it gets a little quiet for a little week as they rest. And then those pike will move to the cabbage. They'll move to shallower, weedy areas, and they'll be gorging. So as much as I love that pike fish, spring pike fishing on the fly, sight fishing them, towards the end of May, mid-May, I love casting for them in the dark, weedy water. So we do have a lot of other color types of water that I didn't really touch on earlier in the water, but we just locally, within a half hour, I would personally say I have like 7 different clarity types of water. So after the spawn, I love going into what I call the brown water, very dark, very murky, very rich in vegetation. So there's where I'll move into next, and that's where I'll be throwing perch pattern streamers, still throwing those smelt streamers, anywhere from 4 feet to 12 feet, be targeting those pike, and that is when you can have some fun. Like the sight fishing's good and that you can have big number days, but towards the end of May, you can have large number days. I mean, some days, like especially on spin casting, like you can have those 60, 70, 80 fish days. And that's no cap. Like, I mean, there's days where it'll be like 5 casts, 5 fish. Not always the biggest. I mean, those are always those, whatever, those 6 to 8 to 10 pounders. The 40-inch plus fish are obviously always hard to catch, but that time frame, sometimes you can get 2 or 3 of those in the boat on the fly in a day. So it just, yeah, towards the end of May, it becomes very productive as those fish really turn on their bite and really start to eat. Yeah, so that's kind of how I spend my May pike fishing. And then towards the end of May, mid-May, another opportunity presents itself, which is very cool and very unique. And that would be the sight fishing I do for gar pike and carp. The gar pike and carp all spawn. The carp will start spawning usually mid-May, towards the end of May. Same with the gar pike. They'll continue on to June a little bit, but they'll be in some of these areas around where I live, where I'll go into these bays and it will be loaded. I mean, hundreds. They're all over the surface. Swimming, the carp are just like bullies, just in their big crowds, just pushing mud, pushing dirt, and with that clarity, you get to see them from so far away. So it's just such a unique opportunity to be able to throw those flies to those carp, have them eat. They're actually a very tricky one to catch. I'm sure a lot of the fly anglers are aware of that from Southern Ontario. It seems to be a popular thing down there. I just got into it in the last probably 3 or 4 years for the carp, so I'm still lots to learn for me there. Where on the other hand, kind of the gar, I love chasing the gar. So I kind of specialize in them, creating these unique little fly patterns of just that bunny strip. That's the way it floats in the water. Sometimes tying a stinger hook is really what helped us over the year with the gar pike, always having that stinger hook just off the back of the fly pattern. Obviously, their bills are very hard to catch. They're very hard to hook into. They eat in such a weird way, with the way they swim up and they just kind of do this little turn and eat. So I find a lot of anglers miss those strip sets. Adding this little stinger hook on there really made the difference over the last couple of years. Rob actually tied up a handful of really good ones last year with little tiny micro trebles almost on the back. And those things have been producing so well when the gars bite. Obviously, still miss a lot of them. Like I said, that bite is so subtle, not always the most aggressive. But like I said, over the last probably 5 years with the gar, I've become so hooked. And my clients, it's pretty funny because they'll be fly fishing for pike. Towards the end of the year, if the pike fishing ever slows down, I talk them into gar pike right away, and then we end up spending hours and hours and hours of targeting the gar because they're having so much fun, because it's very similar to that like ocean style sight fishing in the flats. But yeah, so I mean, that's how I spend my May. I love May. May's really good fishing on the island. Apart from if you don't have a boat and stuff, that steelhead fishing is still prime throughout the month of May. That's in fact, towards like I said, check your regulations. Towards the end of May is when more of those rivers start to open up and give you a lot more opportunities in the streams. But yeah, so that's my May. And then I move into June. June is where I do really well for big pike, muskie when it opens, and then the bass. So June is kind of it's like May. I'm always so busy in May. I'll guide, all 30 days in May. I'll be tired out already, almost feeling like I've done a whole season. And then I'll jump right into June, and it's almost like a refresh because more species start to open up, so I can start to chase more species. So when June comes in, obviously the pike's open, muskie opens up third Saturday in June, bass fourth Saturday in June, and then those species from before are also still open. The first 2 weeks of June are usually still that great opportunity, like I just discussed about towards the end of May, when those pike, after they're spawning, they're in their spawning grounds, they rest a little bit, they move to those weed lines, those spawning bay points. And that's where they'll be hanging out for a couple weeks, gorging on the smelt, gorging on the bait fish. And then so the first 2 weeks of June, I'll still continue that pattern. I'll still be casting, not too big of flies. That 6-inch range seems to be the money at the beginning of June. Anything around that size, I'll be stripping the weeds, still floating lines too. Still haven't switched over yet. Those pike are still aggressive. They're still chasing to the surface. They're still eating hard. So I do really well for the first 2 weeks of June. So if you're ever interested in doing a pike trip, then same with the whole entire Manitoulin Island. If you are here, I know we're talking specifically kind of about Georgian Bay here and the water surrounding the island, but the island offers a lot of inland fishing as well, full of pike lakes. The La Cloche Range, full of pike lakes. Here in Whitefish River First Nation, full of pike lakes. So there's so much opportunity apart from Georgian Bay. And yeah, so I'll fish pike hard still. The gar will still linger around. So if you're still interested in those in June, still fishing those in June. Around third Saturday of June is when muskie opens up. And if you're looking to catch muskie on the fly in this area, from my experience, it's opening week. The first 2 weeks of muskie season, especially on a late year, those water temperatures stay colder. Those fish stay in the spawning bays, or they'll hit the points of those spawning bays. They'll still be on the similar weed lines, not the same weed lines, but they'll be on similar weed lines in their areas that they hang out. Like those pike will be, they'll be resting, they'll be feeding. There's been many years in the last 3 or 4 years where I've guided pike or muskie on the fly by sight fishing for opening week, which I don't know, just blows my mind every time. I think it was 2 years ago. Like I got a 52-inch muskie. Thing had to been in 6 feet of water just off of shore. So clear that we could see this thing. But he laid out a perfect cast, second strip in, that thing just inhaled the fly. And I mean, I don't know what it is about it, but obviously muskie are my favorite fish to target here in the area. And
That's pretty awesome. I don't think I can think of another fishery anywhere where that's a thing, where like consistently sight fishing muskie is a thing. Like it happens everywhere, like see a fish every once in a while, but to be able to actually guide, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, like I said, like I mean, it still blows my mind. It doesn't always happen. I mean, there's those years, like I said, it all depends on the water temperatures. If it heats up too quick, those fish will be out deeper. But these, like I said, this year is lining up to be one of those years. I hope it just continues to stay cooler, push off longer, just because like the longer the water stays cooler, the better chances are of fishing throughout the summer here. But like you said, there's not many places where you can go and actually see visually a muskie, have it eat your fly, and have it be in season, right? Like, I mean, most of the time, by the time these muskies are in season in most areas, they push out to the waters where they're not targetable sight fishing. So it is such a unique experience. Even if they do move off early, there's still a great chance of catching those first 2 weeks. Are just, they're thick in numbers. They're hanging out on the spawning bays, those points. And this is at the point where you start gradually using the bigger flies. Now I'll be up to that, still smaller flies, still around that 4-inch, but all the way up to that 8-inch, always sticking with the natural bait fishing patterns. No matter what, even when I'm lure fishing on Georgian Bay, I always kind of try to match the natural feed in the water. I'm not too much of a fan of bright colors. Well, I guess it's with bass, it's a little bit different, but for the pike and muskie, I just love matching those natural bait fish, whether it be the perch, whether it be the suckers, whether it be whitefish or cisco. Out here, our fish are monstrous of size. So I'm just gonna jump off topic and topic here, but fish are monstrous in size out here. So they will actually eat the trout that are swimming around here. I mean, there's times where you'll see muskie pike over 60 feet deep, eating burbot, eating lake trout, eating rainbow trout. I've been sitting in my boat, middle of summer on a bass shoal and had a 50-inch muskie swim by me with a 20-pound rainbow trout sideways in its mouth. Manitoulin Island is full of fish farms. The fish farms, they're getting better nowadays, but they used to have a lot of escapees. So then all these, and even breakouts were like thousands, hundreds of thousands of these rainbow trout would get out into the water, and they're just kind of like essentially another food source, but super fatty food source for these pike and muskies. So like I'm targeting them where the trout are. So like your fly is never going to be too big up here. So that is where I was originally going with that, was just sticking with those natural bait fish patterns. But here we're lucky enough to have many different bait fish patterns where they could actually be that rainbow trout, that lake trout color, that burbot color, just monster fish eating big bait. So those are those kind of exciting times when the muskie fishing is great in the shallows. That obviously happens throughout the year as well. But my favorite time to fly fish them on the to fly fish for muskies would be the first 2 weeks or last 2 weeks of June when the season opens up, and that first week of July. So if you're ever looking to get a muskie on a fly, definitely hit me up. And after that, it's been a couple months of predator fishing for me here. Usually by mid-June, I'm already at least 30 charters, maybe even close to 40 charters deep, starting to feel it, starting to get tired, starting to get sunburned, but still loving it. So out of breath of fresh air, bass opens up. It opens up a fourth Saturday in June here. And by this time, it's a relief because, like I said, as those bigger predatorial fish move out deeper, they can be more challenging to fish. I can be putting a lot more effort in it and burning a lot more gas and fuel in my boat. So when bass opens up, it just gives that, that good break in the day. Or if bass anglers want to strictly target bass, it makes my life easy just because they are so plentiful here. They are so big. They are so eager to eat. They're in giant schools. So when it opens up, like I said, it's a breath of fresh air. As soon as it opens, bass fishing around Manitoulin Island, poppers, streamers, nymphs, smaller fly size work great. I love poppers. I'm hooked on them. I'll be throwing them whenever I can. So those fish will still be, depending on the water temperature, like I said, same with the muskies, they could still be lingering around their spawning areas. I mean, we've had years where they've still been sitting on their beds when bass opens up for Saturday in June, which is super late compared to most areas. But again, just big cold water, big cold crystal clear water. When those water temperatures stay cold, it makes for some awesome fishing. So that is my June. Like I said, kind of how I'm talking about this. I know I'm kind of wording all this about like my fishing charters and how I do it. Obviously, that is what I'm most knowledgeable about, most experienced at. So that's where I'm kind of going with this presentation. But I'm hoping that you could also take this information and use it on your own, or if you are traveling to this area, I've kind of based my life off the way the fish move around here. So I feel like I've patterned multiple different species throughout the way they move through the season. And this is not a lot of stuff that I've seen on YouTube, or I've learned through reading or anything like that. This is all just self-taught. Like I said, I've been lucky enough to turn fishing into a career. I'm lucky enough to fish a minimum of 200 days a year on Georgian Bay. And I've been doing that for 10 years guiding now, but probably like my entire life. So this is just all stuff, some of it I could be totally wrong on, but I don't feel like, it's just, you watch something happen so many times, you have to see it to believe it. I'll be telling some of the ways that I target these fish to people, and I don't feel like they always believe it. But then then they come and they see it and they experience for the first time, and it's like it is so different from anywhere else. And that's why I love fishing Georgian Bay, especially the northern section. It's just so unpredictable. Anything I can be dialed into these pike and muskie in June, and some weird cold front moves in, something happens, we get crazy wind for a week, and boom, I'm back to square one, not knowing anything. That's probably why I love guiding it so much. It stresses me out so much, and it takes over my life in the summer, and I get grumpy. I do get grumpy. But I think that's why I love it so much, is because it challenges me so much. And I think that's why fly fishermen love this area so much when they do come here, because you're not just casting and catching fish. You're putting in effort, you're learning, you're experiencing, and you're really trying. And when you actually connect with that fish of the lifetime, it just, it makes it that much more rewarding. And I think that's what Georgian Bay is about. It's you can go all over the world, you can catch all these crazy fish all over the world, but like, when you have to work for something, the reward is so much greater, and that's what this fishery is about. So it's a little bit about June. I won't ramble on too much. And July is gorgeous. July is fun in the sun. The sun comes out. Usually the wind stays away, so it's like beautiful time to sight fish, beautiful time to fish for those bass. I'm still on the muskie bite. Especially for those first 2 weeks, I'm still focusing especially on those full moons and those new moons during muskie season. But like I said, the bass, and then also away from fly fishing, I'll start doing more so in the last few years. I'll also start doing a lot more salmon fishing this type of year. Manitoulin Island is definitely known for salmon. The salmon fishing is great all around the island. I mean, you look at it on a map and you just see endless water. There are many great salmon fishing guides on the island as well that strictly focus on salmon fishing. So if you're ever looking to do any salmon fishing, not on the fly, hit me up. I can connect you with those guides. I do salmon fishing charters as well, but there are definitely people that specialize in it on the island, and you know, that's their thing. So I would much prefer sending the salmon people to them, just because, like I said, they know what they're doing. The salmon fishing's great on the island. I love it now. It's something I didn't fish for much 2-3 years ago was when I first started getting into it, much because I was so focused on the pike, the muskie, fly fishing. And then now I'm just, you know, my body started to get older. My shoulders are done. Casting really kind of hurts me nowadays. So that's why I've really taken a liking to the salmon fishing, because, you know, I set up the downriggers. I can sit and relax. Obviously the fight of the salmon tires my arms out too, but so that's kind of what I do in July. Like I said, still on the muskie. Bass is prime time. That's when it's picking up. That's when they're on the shoals, not in the shallows anymore. They're on the rocks. So I'll go a little bit more about that here in a second. Yeah. So open species to target here in July. Obviously, I just kind of listed those three main ones, or the ones that I'm going to target. The first 2 weeks of July, like I said, I kind of rambled on a little bit there already about how great of opportunity it is for those giant pike and giant muskies. So, like I said, pike are spawning, muskies are spawning. They take a break. They move to the weeds. They move to the spawning bay points. They hang out there. Boom. They kind of go away for like this weird little time period. You know, I'll still catch fish, but there's a weird little time period before that opening season, or sometimes it plays in, where they're kind of disappearing, and then boom, they show up in their summer spots. The summer spots around Manitoulin Island are humps. If you don't know what a hump is, that's just a structure, a shoal that's out in the middle, not attached to any land, that's kind of, you know, shallower water surrounded by deeper water. They move to main lake points. They move to shoals, structure, and deep weed beds. My favorite are obviously the humps. I'm addicted to fishing humps in the summer. I love going out there, you know, like once those fish hit their summer spots, and these summer spots around the island can be crazy. I mean, it could be such deep water. I could be fishing, you know, 200 feet of water, 180, 120 feet of water off the front of this 15-foot deep hump. So it'll just go from 15 feet to 150 feet, 150 feet deep in a matter of a cast. So this is where the giants are. You always catch giants, but come summer, you're strictly targeting giants. You know, you're out there. If you're out there in the bigger water, you're out there looking for those monster pike, and you're looking for those monster muskies. You're on those humps. This is the time where it transitions from, you know, that 8-weight, 10-weight. 10-weight is usually what I'll use for pike and muskie. Always, never really use an 8-weight. But this is where you want a little bit of a bigger rod, up to 12-weight rod. You're throwing mega flies. Like I said, this is where you start throwing the flies the size of your forearms. These things are just wet socks going through the water, using as big as bite wire as you possibly can. I always relate it to like my gear fishing. You know, my gear fishing, I'm using 150-pound, 200-pound fluorocarbon leader, and I've had them break through that. Usually not on, like, it's their teeth. It's their teeth on impact is usually where I'll break leaders. So that's why I love having that extra bite wire, as, you know, biggest poundage as you can get. But like I said, pike and muskie on their summer spots. This is where I really get into my groove. You know, I love chasing around the shallows and stuff, but I'd probably have to say this is what I'm better at. It's a unique thing, I guess, maybe that I developed from just spending so much time on the big water out here, that I just kind of know the structures that these fish are looking for. And mainly it's finding that bait, right? You know, this time of year, I'm looking, where are the whitefish? Where are the rainbow trout? Where are the lake trout? Where are the giant fatty fish, where this monstrous fish only has to eat once a day rather than eat a whole bunch a day? So you can still get away with floating lines this time of year on the shallower humps on those main lake points, but this is where I'll start to transition as the water heats up. I'll start transitioning into intermediate lines and full sink lines. I've become a fan of full sink lines over the last few years. Not always the best for casting, but I mean, it works. And like these fish, after they stage on their humps for a few weeks in July, talk about more in August, but then they disappear down to the deep dark water. Something I haven't really touched on here what really gets these predatory fish fired up here on Georgian Bay around Manitoulin Island is just different things. So whether it be thunderstorms, anytime a thunderstorm is rolling in into this area, you can catch me ripping to the dock and rip into my boat to get out on the boat and get to where I know these fish are going to be 15, 20 minutes. I mean, I push it. I push it all the time. Knock on wood here. Clients, obviously, always looking out for their safety. Never risk it with them. Some clients are definitely a lot more risky and like that, that experience. Obviously, never pushing it to a level where it's unsafe. But before those thunder and lightning storms in July, it is wild. I will not see muskies or big pike for 2 days casting. We're casting 12-hour days out there in that deep water. Lightning or thunderstorm rolls in, I'll see muskies almost every cast. Obviously doesn't always happen, but I mean, there's so many times where I'll roll up to a structure that hasn't had a fish on it for a week, and right before this thunderstorm, I'm casting, and these fish are chasing. And it's something that just blows my mind, obviously, to do with barometric pressure, all that scientific stuff. I didn't really read about that stuff first. I just kind of experienced it on my own and then built a connection through watching YouTube and reading and stuff. But thunderstorm, anything to do with the moon, full moon, new moon, those are times to be on those humps. Those are time to be on those shoals. Those are time to be out in the big water chasing monsters in July. And like I said, big baits, as big as baits and as big as flies as you can possibly toss is what you want to be tossing this time of year, just because you are competing with such big bait fish out here. And then, yeah, like I touched on a little bit before, salmon fishing in its prime. So that's the go-to for a lot of people that visit Manitoulin Island. Like I said, I feel like society, the fishing world has kind of changed its opinions on pike, muskie, all those kind of predatory fish. I feel like those were kind of looked down upon in the past. Now they're obviously held on a high value. They give that great Instagram picture. So now I feel like this destination, this area is definitely becoming well more known to the general public. People are coming up here to fish for more other species rather than just that steelhead and salmon. But of all those fish, salmon would be the go-to for July for that general tourist. Obviously not for the fly fishermen, but like I said, if you're looking to come up to the island to fish salmon, feel free to connect with me. I'd love to put you on a salmon guide. But yeah, so that's my July. And now August. So I'm still chasing those pike. I'm still chasing those muskies, but those fish, I'm really waiting for those unique experiences. I'm waiting for the thunderstorms. I'm waiting for the new moons, the full moons, any kind of eclipse systems coming in, any kind of major storms coming in, or if a cold front's coming in, obviously want to get out before a cold front. So I'm usually kind of just waiting for those days in August to target those predatory fish on the fly. Other than that, this is the dog days of summer, I call them. This is the best bass fishing of the year. This is such a unique place to bass fish. I can't stress it enough. I haven't blown it up enough yet in this presentation, but the Manitoulin Island area is loaded with bass, but especially the areas I guide in, the Bay of Islands, the McGregor Bay, the Bay Fin, the Killarney area. The structure is everywhere. You're in these inlets, you're in these bays, you're in these channels. There's thousands of islands, thousands of structures, thousands of shoals, thousands of humps. Like this, everywhere you look, there's a piece of structure, and these are loaded with smallies in August. And this is when the biggest fish move in. This is where you'll get those 5, 6, 7s. This is where you'll get those fish coming out of the depths, hanging out on top of the rocks midday. Everyone's like, oh, should we fish early? Should we fish late? Midday is my favorite time to fish Georgian Bay. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's the warmest part of the day, but I always have my best fishing between 11:30 and 2 p.m. That is when I'm going out fishing, and that is when I'm going out smallie fishing, especially if the wind is down. It is not uncommon to roll up to these humps and these rock shelves or these boulder shelves and roll up to them and see bass everywhere, everywhere you look, the whole entire bottom, and they will let you float right up to them. I could practically sometimes put a fishing rod down in the water and poke the bass. They all just congregate, and I swear it's because I'll do a lot of family fishing charters, I'm honest, I use a lot of worms certain time of year to catch kids fish. Obviously circle hooks, we're always still catching and releasing. We're still but I got to put kids on fish. So I'll have all these busy times where, we're loading the lake with worms, we're loading the lake, plastics, we're catching fish. And I feel like these fish over the years have become trained because like I roll up my boat and boom, these fish come up on the structure and huddle around the boat. So for the fly fishing, it's such a crazy experience to have all these giant smallies on there and just throw flies and they just crush them all the time. And like I said, I'm talking 5, 6, possibly 7 pounders. So it's just a unique experience at large number of days. This is when you want to come, you want to get your rod bent and catch a bunch of fish. Come fishing Manitoulin Island area in August for smallies. And again, those poppers, those are those streamers, really matching, especially in August, really matching that goby patterns. Anything you get, those heavy-headed, the big eye flies, anything with a heavy head, anything that you can, if they are slower, they're not coming up to the surface. Anything you can get right down to those rocks and just boom, 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 bounce them along those rocks is key. Some of the really kind of unique areas around Manitoulin Island are also the sand beaches. To a lot of sand beaches around this whole entire area. And these sand beaches are loaded with smallies. And it's such a cool experience to go put the boat on spot lock, sit and hang out and just wait because they'll come in cycles. They'll come every 10, 15 minutes. You'll have a new fresh school of fish pop up on that structure and swim along the sandy beach right to the boat. So it's just like, again, that very saltwater experience, that like, sight fishing, that, it's almost like fishing bonefish or something. You're sitting there and you're watching the school and you're watching them break the water sometimes. And it's just all around like a very cool fly fishing experience. But I don't even know how to compare it to other bass fishing around the province. I don't know how to say it's better. I know there's amazing spots to bass fish. I'm not saying this is the best, but it is just such a place to bass fish. And I don't even know how to explain how good it truly is unless you're here and I can show you. But yeah, so that's August for me. And like I said, I'm tired, do really well, still get those big pikes, still get that muskie. And then it's into the fall. I clump together fall fishing all into one just because it's a large time period, but usually I'm still like September fully booked, October fully booked, November half booked. So I'm still guiding lots. But it becomes different. Fly fishing September. You want to fly fish Manitoulin Island, definitely come. Another September is another great time to come up here. After, like I said, those pike and those muskies spawn, rest, weeds, rest, humps, main lake points, boom, out in the depths in August, everything comes back to the weed lines and to the shallower water in September, more towards the end as well. That's when you'll get those big muskies on the weed lines, perfect water depth to target them on the fly. That's where, you'll be fishing a 15-foot weed line. That muskie will be sitting parked out front of that weed line. You get that fly to pause as soon as that fly comes off of that weed line. That's when you're going to catch a big muskie because they are there in September. Pike fishing is exactly the same, still using those giant flies. One thing I do want to touch out, just because that photo caught my eye over in the left, that in the dark there in the muskie at night, September offers another unique fly fishing experience, and that's muskies on the topwater fly. Using big topwater flies, fishing, I'll start my charters at 8 p.m. So I still get that last light. We'll fish, and then we'll fish till even as late as the client wants to fish. I will fish if they book a muskie topwater night fish. It is such a exhilarating experience. Chaotic. Definitely want to make sure you're up to casting. You're good. You're confident in your casting. And don't worry, I get tons of hooks in the backs of the head all year, so I'm definitely used to that. But it can be challenging casting those giant flies in the dark. Thankfully, my new boat, my Kingfisher, lots of space. I got lots of lights, so we'll light it up in there. But it's a cool experience to think about getting a giant Georgian Bay muskie on the fly at night, and it's very productive. It's a really good chance of actually making that dream come true, just because of where the locations the fish are. And then also just the weather conditions. Like I said, September will chill off. It'll start getting colder. Those bigger fish will be on those weed lines. The water calms down a bit. Fishing those full moons. But I've had really good success putting people on muskie on the fly rod topwater at night. So just wanted to touch on that, just because, like I said, it's so exhilarating. Doesn't always work, but it is so exhilarating when it happens. And then again, smallies are huge. September, obviously, all fish are kind of starting to pack on that winter weight towards the end of the fall. And so everything is still fly targetable. It remains fly targetable all the time, but October, November really kind of slow down. You really got to be that dedicated fly angler to be up here. Obviously, the steelhead are moving back into the streams and stuff. So if you're still looking to do that stuff, great time to be at the tributaries or the shorelines. But October, November out here on the bigger water, it becomes a challenge. There's certain times if you can line up the Cisco's in October and November, you can find those big baits. You can use full sink, stripping streamers, getting them real deep. But by that time of the year, the fish are moved out deep. So my later part of guiding, usually in the fall, is just a lot of musky trolling, drying crankbaits. So that's kind of how I end off my year. A really cool, unique experience during this time on the island, obviously, is the salmon run. All the tributaries, I believe, like I said, check your regulations. September 30th, everything closes after that. But it's just, if you have partners or friends that want to come up and, not necessarily fish, the salmon run is a very unique experience, especially locations like Bridalveil Falls, the scenic waterfalls. You can go to the base of those and see all these giant Chinook salmon swimming around with some steelhead chasing around trying to eat their eggs as well. But it's just, like I said, it's a really cool experience. Kind of brings all life. The eagles come in, everything, all life kind of revolves around these salmon in the fall. So that's a really cool and unique experience to check out in this area in the fall. And that kind of concludes my my fishing throughout the season. That's my guide season there for you. So I hope that was kind of interesting. um Apart from that, like I said, I hope you can take what I do and my knowledge here about how I follow these fish throughout the year and put that into play, whether you come up and fish with me or if you just go fish on your own in this area. Just kind of really pay attention to what those fish are doing, because they do have a pattern and they do have a system built in their head, and year after year they will follow those patterns. And like I said, especially in an area like this, I'll see it where I see that same fish. I know it's the same fish, especially when I catch the fish and has the same markings or M&R GPS, the tracker tags in the back. I know it's the same fish, but I will see those fish returning to the same spawning beds, and then they'll do the same pattern. They'll go out to that certain, that main lake point, or they'll go out to that hump, or they'll go out to that weed line after they're done their spawn or whatever they're done. And like, it's amazing to actually put that connection through and like see that fish for a week while it's spawning, because I'm out there, I'm out there while muskies are spawning and pike are spawning, and viewing them, obviously giving them space, not interfering with what they're doing. But I love just cruising the shorelines or even off the dock here and just checking out those fish. But it's really cool experience to catch your eye and notice that fish, and then 2-3 weeks later strip a fly in front of it and have it eat, and you caught that fish that you saw in that water that previous year or that week before. And that is something that happens often here up around the island. I'm sure it happens everywhere too, but it's just something that's really caught my eye over the years, is really figuring out the patterns and the way these fish move out through their environment through the year. So yeah, that pretty much concludes the fishing part of that. Just brief touching on the gear. If you are coming up to the island, obviously 8-weight, 10-weight. 8-weight's going to cover all those, the garpike, the carp, the bass fishing for sure. You definitely want a bigger rod. I know people definitely downsize in bass weights, 6-weight, 5-weight, 7-weights for bass. Those will definitely get you by. For this fishing I do, I like being that 8-weight for bass, just because the bass are big here and they will put up a fight. So I like being able to control those fish. 10-weight, obviously, for the pike and muskie. 12-weight, if you have it. Obviously, I have one. I use my 10-weight more just because my arms and my shoulders these days just can't handle it anymore. Key thing to the fishing in this area too, fast action rods. You want sticks in this area. Essentially, it's windy. Like I said, you can always get away from it, but typically the fish are always in the wind. So you definitely want fast action rod. You want something that you can punch through that wind with. Following the fish, using your lines to follow those fish. Floating earlier years, I will get away with floating for bass all year round. I just use heavier headed flies. I just love the floating line for bass fishing. The full sink for pike and muskie, and intermediate sink later on in the year, those July and August months. But for the most part, I'm a true believer that like if the fish are going to eat, they're going to eat. I'm not someone who's rolling around changing my fly every 5 minutes. I'm not, changing different lines. I'm convinced that if there's feeding fish in the area, they're going to eat. I've seen them shoot up from 20, 30, 40 feet on the bottom all the way up to the surface to inhale a fly. So I know they're fully capable of doing it. So that's why I'm always kind of just finding the fish, more focused on just finding the fish and finding fish that are eating. And yeah, so just gonna kind of end it here with another little thing, another little project I'm doing. If you are visiting the island, planning to visit the island, so another business venture I'm moving into. Fly fishing, one of the things I love about fly fishing. It's kind of brought me to a lot of cool places around the world. I get to experience all these unique accommodations, these unique experiences. So one thing me and my wife are doing right now, we're starting a luxury glamping resort, which is the geodomes, as you can see in this picture. These are two geodesic domes that we're starting with. One's 20 foot, which is meant for couples. The other one's 26-foot diameter, which actually has a Manitoulin cedar timber frame loft in it, which sleeps 4 people. These have full propane kitchenettes in them, little bar fridges, propane stoves. These have fireplaces. These are going to have AC. These are literally going to be little luxury apartments in geodomes, which are based in Birch Island, Whitefish River First Nation, on the property of a marina. So there's marina access. These are hidden up in the forest. Like I said, this is more for that unique, adventurous kind of fly fisherman or just general tourist. Obviously, there's these things don't have. So it is for, like I said, it's glamping. So there is going to be some things that happen where it is like not typically your hotel stay, but I think that's where it offers that uniqueness to it. So these are going to be located just from these actual domes is only just a 2 to 3 minute walk to your own private dock, which offers great fishing, which a lot of these fish in this slide were actually caught right in this area. So right off the dock of these domes are going to be pike, muskie, bass, rainbow trout, pretty much anything you can imagine. As you can see, it's the gateway to McGregor Bay and Bay of Islands. So endless possibilities. Another unique experience or unique thing that we're adding to these. So when you rent these domes, they will come with paddle boards, specifically Taiga paddle boards, which is a company I work with. But they will also come with their Houquet version of the Taiga paddleboard, which is a fly fishing version, as you can see in the right side of the photo. So when you rent these geodomes, you will get access to paddleboards, canoes, and also a rowboat. So it kind of just all in one. You can come stay here. You can stay in the domes. You can spend your days fishing. You could go on a guided day with me, but you could also do some of your own self stuff, and you can take the paddle boards out, explore the area, bring your own boat since there's a boat launch. But something that I love about this experience, why I think I could push it on fishermen, is it offers your partner and significant other something to do as well. That's not just a fishing focused trip. These geodomes cater to all, caters to the wives, cater to your partners. While you're out fishing, they could be relaxing on the domes on the patio furniture. They could be down on the lake, sitting on the dock while you're out fishing. So it just gives that experience. I've always wanted that, right? Whenever I'm planning a vacation with my wife, it's always like I get 3 days fishing and then there's 4 days, 5 days, whatever many days she gets. But so that's why we really wanted to focus on with this resort, was giving something for everybody to enjoy doing. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for me. I hope you enjoyed this talk. I appreciate Drift for having me here. If you're looking to book a trip with me, fishmanitoulin You can do bookings through my website. Follow us on social media. Social media is kind of what has allowed me to do all this. So I'm very appreciative of that. Stillwater_fishing. I think on TikTok, we have about 85,000 followers, and on Instagram, we have 10,000. So it's kind of, not big in today's society, but big enough to give me a voice and big enough to help me turn fishing into a career. So follow me on there if you want to reach out to me to chat fishing or to book a day.